Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The city's chief legal officer on the removal of the Confederate statues tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Bruce McMullen, Chief Legal Officer for the City of Memphis. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we'll talk about the statues, and let's start with, obviously as Chief Legal Officer, as the lawyer to the mayor's office, for people who have not followed this maybe as closely in terms of all the machinations of moving the statues legally, moving the land, what is your description of what has happened to the statues and to the land itself that was once parkland and is now in private hands?
Well, what has happened is we have sold the park to a nonprofit entity. The city, what most people don't realize, we sell land all the time. We dispose of land all the time. There was an ordinance change which allowed us to sell park land for a nominal value to a nonprofit, provided that they treated it similar, meaning that they allowed it to be open to the public, open to public use, no development on it, and there are a number of covenants and restrictions that was put on that sale. And we sold it to Green Space for a nominal amount, and we're confident that they will do us right. We do have certain protections. If they violate certain covenants or restrictions, then we have the right to buy the parkland back.
And so for people who, that ordinance you mentioned, that was passed by City Council some months ago, right? And
right.
As the city is going through the process of negotiating with the State Historical Commission on the removal of statues, there were, by at least some accounts, a lot of planning in the background, right? Which I assume you were part of if this negotiation with the Historical Commission doesn't go well, we've got to have a plan B or a plan C.
Absolutely, and the mayor has been consistent, and I think I've been consistent in all of my public statements. We were going to pursue every legal means to have the statues removed before the MLK 50, which is on the 4th of April. And those avenues, we simultaneously pursued all those legal avenues, and it was our position that we wanted to follow the appeal before the Historic Commission, but we also had this going simultaneously.
To what degree were you worried, again, from a legal point of view, there's the politics of this and then there's the legalities. From a legal point of view, to what degree were you worried about the state legislature, which goes into session next week, coming in and changing some of these laws and taking this option, the option you guys took, taking it off the table?
Well, as the chief legal officer, that was a major concern of mine. If you look at the history, there was first a law passed in 2013, the Tennessee Historic Commission Act, and that prohibited a municipality from moving any war memorial. Then in 2017, that law was tightened up, so to speak, made it more difficult by adding not only war memorial, but historical figure. As you may know, the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue that was in Health Science Park, that was not a war memorial. So under the 2013 law, it was our position that it did not apply to that. So then there was a 2016 law that kind of closed up that loophole, so to speak. So the trend showed that the state legislature was progressively making it more and more difficult to move any of these war memorials or historic figures. So I knew that they would go into session in January, and that was just a concern of mine. It wasn't nothing anyone said, but that was a logical concern.
All right, a bunch of things to dig into there, but let me get Bill Dries involved. Bill, go.
So Bruce, with the action that the council has taken on the parkland and the monuments being down, are any of the other parts of this legal strategy that the city was pursuing, or the lawsuits that people had filed against the city over the monuments before their removal, are those points still being pursued, or are they dead at this point?
Well, that's interesting you should ask. We're going through and doing an analysis of what we're going to do with each of those cases. Just generally, I think they are moot point, because I'm confident what we did was legal and what we did will stand. And just from that perspective, we feel it's a moot point. But going through the legalities of dismissing these or making certain legal motions to resolve those things, we haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm. The state at one point approached the city and urged the city to engage in a mediation process with the other parties, and this is Sons of Confederate Veterans, the Forrest descendants. Did that mediation actually ever happen? Were there any talks that were part of a mediation process?
That mediation never happened. It was scheduled a couple of times, and I think initially the Sons of the Confederacy refused to mediate, and then I think they made a public statement that they would mediate, but they would not offer any concessions. And their position was that the statute should stay where they are, undisturbed, and not moved at all. That mediation was put off to, it was originally December 1st. I think it was put off to December 20th, and then it was put off to January 16th.
And in the background on this, the city's legal position was, we have to see at least some movement on mediation by December 19th. The city, in effect, put everyone on notice that we consider December 19th to be a very critical date in that process if it happens.
Well, I did, because no land of the city can be sold without city council's approval. So I had a number of targets I was watching, and one of them was when city council meets. And as you've alluded to before, when the legislature goes back into session. So we came up, the 19th from my perspective was a drop dead date that we had to do something.
So for a bunch of questions. One is, at the Nathan Bedford Forest site, there is still a tomb there, there's a grave there. What happens with that? The statue is down, but there's still the question of what happens with the base and the remains, and are there other ordinances that have to be followed and rules that have to be followed in terms of moving a gravesite? Well,
you're merging two issues. First, when you talk about the base of the statue, the marble base, that can be removed by green space, and that's up to them if they want to remove that.
Okay.
Now, a separate issue is the graves.
Okay.
And legally, those who oppose what we're doing have tried to make a legal argument that maybe the statute is in some way a tombstone, so to speak, because there would have been efforts to, by legal argument, link the statute to the graves. And that's a critical leap, because when you remove a grave site, there's a whole different body of law you must follow that is different.
Great. Will green space have to follow that, or the city have to follow if they want to move the remains?
If they want to remove the remains, I don't know that they have any interest in removing the remains.
That was not one of the conditions or covenants you talked about that when you sold the land to green space, that the remains would be moved or would not be moved.
Yes, that was not any of the conditions or covenants. And I want to make clear the conditions and covenants had to do more so with having that park open to the public, not developing it. Removal of the statutes, that was not a covenant or a promise that would be done. Those are actions that green space took.
But that you expected that green space would remove them?
Absolutely.
Okay. People have, without getting into the whole question of should the statues come down, okay, we're going to try to stick with more of the legal issues right now. But in terms of the question of the means by which it was done, I've had lots of people, and it's been written about, who wanted the statues to come down, but are very concerned about the means. That is this now the city council and city has this way to very quickly, very easily take public property and sell it off to anybody they want. So, people have brought up, the Greensward, or they brought up, zoo property or other public land or community centers or libraries. Is this a bad precedent? Even if the end is justified from your point of view and the point of view of the people who wanted the statues to come down, is it bad policy? And is it that the city council now can very quickly get rid of public land without a whole lot of oversight?
Well, I would like to put this in the category of a unique situation, an anomaly, and it was something that we needed to do by a certain period of time. I don't think this sets precedent as to how we would dispose of park land, but I do want you to know that we dispose of land all the time, and it never makes the news. We sell property all the time, and it just has to have city council's approval to do so. But what we did in this situation, there are a number of issues that we were cognizant of. One is public safety during the MLK 50. I think a lot of people don't appreciate the public safety factor that we were considering with having those statues there, the kind of incendiary effect of having protesters and counter-protesters, and then you have the MLK 50, and I don't need to remind people of what happened in Charlottesville. Yeah. So we were trying, it was important for us to get rid of, to handle those distractions, to have more of a smoother commemoration of MLK 50. The way it was done, a lot of it had to do with public safety. The timing of when it was done, the way it was done very quickly and swiftly, a lot of that had to do with public safety concerns.
Yeah, go to Bill, we have about 15 minutes left.
Could a future administration or a future city council use what happened here and apply it to a situation that maybe is not as unique as this, something that is as common as, say, wanting to do this for some other purpose that might just be a shortcut or a way to do it?
I guess in theory, it can be done because what was done was legal and correct according to the ordinances and resolutions that have been passed in this city. But keep in mind now, you have a city council with 13 members, okay, that will have to agree upon whatever you're doing. Okay, so if the mayor decides to sell park land, he still has to, the administration has to make that decision. City council has to vote an ordinance, and the ordinance will go through 3 readings. So it's not something that can be done in one day. If you look back over this, the ordinance, that was the 3rd reading of the ordinance, and it was correctly captioned disposal of the Nathan Bedford Forrest statute. So it wasn't something that was just done overnight.
Did we just miss that? That there was 3 readings in the media and the public?
I think
because people think it was done kind of in the dark of night, real quickly, 3rd reading, cryptic language, and boom, the trucks were out there.
Well, if you look at, I think the ordinance required that any, I think the charter requires any ordinance, the caption to be reflective of what's in the ordinance in some sense, and the caption is never changed. I think a lot of people missed it. There's a lot of business that goes on in city government that just doesn't draw attention, but there was 3 readings.
But there was a substitute ordinance by Councilman Ford, and again, the caption remained consistent, but there was a substitute ordinance. Is there any condition in there with a substitute ordinance on 3rd reading that it would have to undergo a 2nd, 3rd reading in effect, as we see in some cases when a significant change is made?
It has been done that way, I know, ever since I've been city attorney. Mm-hmm. And the substitute ordinance, I think what was really put into the ordinance was the specific entity in which the property would be sold to. And I don't think it changed the spirit of the ordinance or what was going to be done or what was done on the 1st reading.
In advance of this happening, did the city administration, in effect, say, okay, Memphis Green Space, this is how you're going to exist? Or was there a discussion between the city administration and Van Turner and the other officers of Memphis Green Space about how Memphis Green Space would unfold, how it would exist?
I had discussions with Van Turner. There were some nonprofits that approached us. There were some nonprofits that approached us and said, no, we don't want any part of it. And I had a discussion with Van early on. He was willing to help, but there were conditions, as I talked about, that the nonprofit would have to adhere to. And that would be a part of the covenants and restrictions, and he was aware of that. But
is there any concern? I'm sorry to cut you off, but is there any concern that Van Turner, who's also a county commissioner, that there was some conflict in that? I mean, did you all talk that through?
Yes, we talked that through but it is not Van Turner personally. The parkland was not sold to Van Turner personally. It was sold to a nonprofit that has a board, and he doesn't gain anything financially from having being the executive director of the nonprofit.
Do you expect the city to be sued over this?
Well,
the city is sued all the time on some level. If you go through the records, I mean, people are constantly suing the city and they're suing the county. I mean, so in and of itself, but you all ready for a big legal and extended fight over this potentially?
Well, we think what we did was legally correct. I can't control whether or not someone disagrees with that and want to test it in court. We anticipate that. That's what my office does. So we've anticipated that there may be some legal challenges, but we're confident that what we did is correct and that will prevail ultimately.
Do you worry that there will be retribution from the state legislature? That they will do things, anything, and people have talked anything from cutting down, maybe eliminating this avenue and putting further, limits on what municipalities can do, or to the city has two big TDZ proposals out there for riverfront development, for fairgrounds redevelopment. I mean, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at risk. People have said, well, now the state's never going to approve those tourism development zones.
I can't really speak for how the state legislature will react to what happened, but I will say this. Our communications have been consistent that we were going to do it legally. And we felt like if we did it legally, we did it within the law, that there would be no sense of there needs to be some type of retribution.
Right. But and again, the people who said it's really more of a political thing. And again, you're answering from the legal point of view. One more question. I'll go back to Bill. Where are the statues?
I don't know.
Does anyone in the city government know? I mean, let me ask the question differently. Was that part of the coordination with Green Space? Was that one of the conditions that they would not, throw them away, that they would preserve the statues? Were there conditions on the treatment and location of the statues between the city and Green Space Inc.?
Well, yeah. What I do know is that Green Space will preserve the statutes, and hopefully they will work with a group of citizens, the Sons of Confederacy, the descendants, on working out a place where the statues can be put that it can be appreciated by those who appreciate it, and that process. But I am confident that no harm has come to the statues, and I'm confident that Van Turner is looking into avenues to have the statues placed in a place that they can be appreciated by those who do appreciate that type of history.
Okay, Bill.
Our simple but possibly complex question: are the statues, are the monuments themselves, are they city property?
No.
Did they become the property of Green Space under the terms of the sale?
Yes. If you look at the sales documents, two things were done. The park was sold, and there's one argument that the statues are fixtures and they go along with the park, but there was also a bill of sale for personal property that also included those statues. So it's kind of putting your belt and suspenders on. So Green Space Inc. Owns the statues.
If the Tennessee legislature were to pass a law in the coming session and say nobody can do what the city just did, whether it's legal or not, can that be retroactive in any way to what the city has done?
No, it's my legal opinion that you can't pass what they call ex post facto laws. You can't pass a law later that goes back and changes or have someone to redo something that they did. Now, it gets a little complex because a legal analysis, whether it's a procedural change or a substantive change, but we won't go through that. But we're confident that that would be a substantive change, and you can't pass an ex post facto law to go back. Now, any law that they pass will say you can't do this in the future from this day on.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, as you outlined, we had the first law on this matter in 2013, and then the council acted to change the names of the parks before the 2016 law was passed. So is it the city's position that that previous council action was ahead of the 2016 law that closed the loophole?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the Court of Appeals, maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago, ruled on the name change. As you know, the name change took place some time ago, and that was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and they ruled on it that the name change was valid, and that the park name change to Health Science Park and I think Memphis Park was valid. And in doing that analysis, you went through the ex post facto portion of the law and whether any new law would be retroactive or not.
Questions, just again, a kind of basic question, but it's complicated. Who will keep up the parks?
Memphis Green Space.
Their costs, their expense,
their costs, their expense for maintaining the park.
Will there be money from the city that goes to Green Space Inc.? I mean, whether it's a grant or any kind of funding of Green Space Inc. of city money?
Not that I know of. Now, they are fully free to request a grant from the city like any other nonprofit. Right. But there's no, that I'm aware of, set up operation for the city to provide financing to Memphis Green Space. They raise their own money and they're responsible for maintenance and programming of that space. And
you said this before, but just to go through it again, I mean, does the city have a right to buy the property back at any time?
Well,
or only if they fail to meet certain conditions?
If they fail to meet certain conditions.
Which would be, again, things like keeping the park open, keeping the park upkeep, that kind of thing?
Right, and keeping it open to the public and it can't develop the property. It has to be open space to be used by the public.
The night of when the statues came down, and you mentioned before about security, and obviously Charlottesville was heavy on your minds, and Charleston, and I'm not sure, I went down there and tried to kind of see what was going on, and the security presence, the police presence was amazing. I mean, it was something else. And how much, I don't know, were you involved in that? I mean, or was that part that everyone was sort of involved in saying, look, we are going to have a massive presence, many blocks perimeter. People talked about snipers on roofs. I mean, it was no small thing. It was not just a couple of trucks and a few, police shutting down the street.
Absolutely. The planning was a long, detailed, extensive process. And like I said earlier, one of the key concerns with us was public safety. And so that was planned out ahead of time. We had everything in effect. And also we needed to do it swiftly because you had to maintain public safety from the time that the cranes got there to remove the statues until they were taken down. And the shorter period of time you do that, the better you can maintain public safety. So it was something that was planned through. We planned through in very, very detail. We planned through the legal process. We planned through the logistical process, what route the statues would be taken to some form of storage, and we planned through how we would secure the area for public safety.
And again, public safety, security, and concerns about this, and again, memories of other cities where there have been protests over this thing. There is talk of a protest this coming weekend. We're taping this on Thursday, I think on Saturday, if I have that right. Is the city worried about those protests? And have those protesters gone through they have to get some sort of permit, I assume. Have they gone through that process to your knowledge?
We have not received, as of today, any request for a permit to protest. We're aware that there's some talk from some organizations that there will be a protest this weekend. Director Rollins is prepared for that. We think we're looking at providing some protest areas for those who want to legally protest, but up until now, we've not received a permit request.
And what's the process of getting a permit for people who don't know? I mean, can they do it very quickly, or do they need to do it 24 hours in advance, or?
Actually, protest permit, you need to do it 14 days in advance. So we're inside the 14 days.
So if they don't get that, will the police shut them down?
Well, that would be an illegal protest. Now, there is an exception to that. If some event occurs that would lead to immediate protest, there's a 2-day window in which you would protest. But protesting, taking down the statues would have required them to get a permit 14 days in advance, and we haven't received a permit. So we don't know of any real legal protests that could take place.
We got through a lot. We got 30 seconds left. We'll probably just have to leave it there. But we appreciate you being here. Thanks for asking the questions. Thanks for walking through all this. We appreciate your time. And Bill, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.